qualifying persons who are detained under threat of deportation. So it is my pleasure to welcome you here this evening for a special Hispanic Heritage Month event celebrating Latino achievement. I mentioned diversity. Prince George's County is a wonderfully diverse place. Approximately 23 of our residents are immigrants. We have 64% identifying as Black or African American, and we have 21% as part of the Latin and Hispanic diaspora. To tell the story of Prince George's County is to tell the story of us, of our achievements, and of the ongoing and rich contributions of those of the Latin and Hispanic diaspora. There are a lot of people we could have highlighted this evening. Our county and our region has an abundance of people to celebrate. But tonight we are focusing specifically on two young community activists, Alvaro Ceron-Ruiz and Ashanti Martinez, whose lives of service, commitment to elected office, and work on behalf of county residents locally and throughout the state makes significant contributions to us all. While our third guest, muralist MISS CHELOVE, will provide an overview of her art, and in so doing, give us one example of the ways that the Latin and Hispanic diaspora has profound influence throughout the many sectors of our lives. But before we hear from our guests, we have a very special treat tonight from the Prince George's County Police Department in the person of Officer Alex Strawn. We are delighted to have him as a musical guest with us to open our program as we focus tonight again on community, on relationship building, on allyship. The Prince George's County Police Department presents Officer Alexander Strawn in a live violin performance. Officer Strawn strives to continue healing people of all walks of life through his violin playing while serving as a police officer. He is a longtime Bowie resident and performer in nursing homes. Officer Strawn currently patrols in District 5, which is Clinton. He still takes violin lessons from Holly Hamilton, who is with the National Symphony Orchestra. So before I continue with introductions and what tonight will bring, we welcome Officer Strawn to grace us with a musical selection.
Good evening, everybody. The name of this piece is Que Sera Sera.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Que sera, sera. So thank you. I'm sure I did not pronounce it right. Thank you, officer. So now that we've set the tone and really, again, part of what our office does is really, as I mentioned before, building community. And so we're focusing tonight, again, our celebration of our Latin and Hispanic diaspora. And so joining me tonight in co-moderating is our Assistant Director of the Office of Human Rights and also our Investigation Division Manager, Jose Villegas, and he will get us started with our first guest. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butterbrooks. And I would like to say thank you to all our guests for being with us tonight. So the first panelist or the first guest that we will introduce is Alvaro Ceron-Ruiz. He is a PGCPS proud student of class 2023. He is a senior at Eleanor Roosevelt High School and is a current student member of the Prince George's County Board of Education. Thank you, Alvaro, for being here with us tonight. I know that your bio is extensive, but we want to kind of start in the way that, like a conversation. So I know that a lot of people know you based on what your position in the board is. Other people might not. So can you tell us who is Alvaro Ceron-Ruiz?
All right, so thank you so much, Jose. And yes, my name is Alvaro Ceron-Ruiz. I am a senior at the illustrious Eleanor Roosevelt High School and have the pleasure of serving and representing our over 130,000 students on the Board of Education as the student member of the board. What the Board of Education does is our task is two main things, is governance by issuing policies to make sure the school system is being run well, and then oversight of our budget, ensuring that our capital budget for school buildings, infrastructure, and our operating budget for day-to-day expenditures is being properly done well. And so my job as the student member of the board, along with the over 13 adult board members, is to ensure that our community is being heard. My job as a student board member is to ensure the student voice and perspective is being brought to those conversations, to the board and to our CEO, Dr. Monica Golson. Every year, a student board member is elected by students and serves that term for 1 year, ensuring that they're attending every board meeting, every work session, every committee meeting, bringing that student perspective and that student voice, passing policies and doing events, things to push the student voice to ensure that they're being heard. And this position honestly has been a huge life changer. Student voice and advocacy has been something truly big and impactful in my life since the 7th grade, when I first joined student government. Being able to see students up on a stage speaking their truth, speaking their mind, was truly empowering for me. And so when I first was exposed to the role of student member of the board, that was something I had to go for, something that I knew I could put myself in because I had a voice that needed to be heard. And when my sophomore year came, the Board of Education fell to a point where there was no Latino representation. And to me, having over 32% or 36% of the student population being Latino and having no Latino representation on the board, that wasn't right. So I decided to run at the end of my sophomore year, put myself out there, led my campaign, and fortunately was elected as the first Latino student member of the Board of Education for Prince George's County. I'm the 42nd student member of the board. And so when I first did my term last year, my drive was really on diversity. It was on ensuring that students and staff and parents of all walks of life, all backgrounds felt welcome, which is why I was able to join one of my former colleagues, Rahila Ahmed, in passing our inclusive environments policy, which ensured that anyone who walked into our school buildings felt welcome by ensuring the school system administration passed administrative procedure that would ensure that all people felt welcome in our schools. And so that first term was truly impactful to me, and being able to, speak the truth of students drove me to want to go for re-election, ensure that students felt, that their voice was being heard, and to ensure that someone who already had experience learning the ways that the school system runs, because it takes a while. We're a huge school system, so it's a lot of things to have to learn in 1 year. And so given the opportunity to run again for my senior year, I took the opportunity and was reelected, and now serving my second term.
Well, congrats on that, on your re-election. I do want to ask a question about, I know that as a Latino community, we are very diverse. We come from 20 different, one of the 20 different countries in Latin America and in Central America. So can you give us a little taste of that background of where either with your parents or grandparents are, just to kind of learn a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, no, my parents and my family were from Guatemala. And so I'm a proud, hugely proud Guatemalan American who is always proud of my roots. I know not too long ago at the start of Hispanic Heritage Month, I was given the opportunity to go with my mom on Fox 5 for a segment on Hispanic Heritage Month for PGCPS and share a piece of the Guatemalan culture by doing actually one of our recipes. And so being Guatemalan American has been a huge and instrumental part of my life. I guess really with my upbringing and the core values that were brought on to me by my parents.
I actually have a question. I love how you said it was life-changing when you joined the board. Can you unpack that just a little bit more? Maybe give us a little picture of how life-changing or in what ways it was.
I feel I have been exposed to things that many students would never get the opportunity to, understanding the process, the way things work, and meeting people that would open many doors for you. And so with this role, I've been able to first meet people who have been able to offer me internships, things like that, but then also in turn support my community, support by passing policies, hosting. I know I hosted last year one of PGCPS's first Hispanic Heritage event for students. And so it was really impactful in the way that I was able to meet a lot of people, benefit a lot from the position and growth, but then also support others in that role.
Now, you mentioned about certain that you had the opportunity to advocate for certain policies that has also assisted the community. Could you give us an example of some of those policies that probably that you were part of in the implementation or creation of that assist that directly impact that either the community or the other students?
Yeah, so one of the first main things was that diversity policy was ensuring that people from all backgrounds felt welcome. Something I have been really looking forward and into is the Board of Education passed a ELL work group recommendation. And so we had a work group that presented the Board of Education with different recommendations to ensure that our English language learners felt that they were getting that world-class education and get that, I guess, proper achievement in their academics. And so they presented recommendations to ensure that those ELLs were getting that nice, good education that they deserve in PGCPS. And so that plan is a multi-year plan that will have different, I guess, implementations starting this year, actually. And so really been on top of that, ensuring, the school system is making sure we are meeting what the recommendations were, ensuring that the people who took part of this work group, they're actually being heard. Another thing I've been really pushing for is diversification in our staff. I want to say less than 6% of our total staff population with principals, bus drivers, teachers are actually Latino or Hispanic. And so wanting to, diversify that, I guess, community, because as it stands now, actually one of our only, for high school principals, we only have one Latina principal of our whole school system with 28 high schools. And with such a large Latino population, I think there's value in students seeing someone like them in leadership roles and being just a teacher, even to be able to relate to them. And so for our students to at least get one teacher, one principal who is able to connect with them or maybe even impact their lives is so important. So that is something also we're really pushing for, is that diversification.
One of the things that I mentioned in the opening was language access. That's one of our divisions. And I would love for you to share with those listening how the public school system, how PGCPS really deals with language access, because it is a diverse population of multiple languages that are spoken. And some of the barriers that can happen, whether it's communicating with parents or students themselves. So maybe you could give us a little education about how that works.
Yeah, sure. And I know we are doing much better now in terms of ensuring a lot of our parents who may not speak English are feeling involved. I know when I first started my educational career, my parents weren't able to be as involved because a lot of the information that was being shared was only in English. And so they weren't able to be as active with my educational trajectory. But now I know the school system is making a huge push towards ensuring that those parents are involved, they're able to, take part in their students' education. So firstly, for our ELL or ESOL students, we have our ESOL coordinators that work not just with the students in school, but also work with their parents, ensuring that they're staying on top of their grades, staying on top of events, ensuring that they know, the certain requirements of being in the school system, requirements to graduate, things like that, but offering them the resources to be involved in their students' education. I know another big push is ensuring that in our main offices, we have people who are bilingual, who can speak English and Spanish to translate for our families who may come. Because I know the process of registration for schools is such a tedious process, and a process that, just translations on the website isn't really going to do much for you. And so those are some of the pushes that the school system is doing to ensure, that language barrier can start coming down.
Yeah, I imagine that sitting today and looking back when you first started, probably that learning curve, right? Steep and I could imagine that you're like, wow, there's so many things, right? That that the rest of us don't, about how the system and the importance of understanding how systems work. What advice would you give to students that are looking at you and wanting to follow in your footsteps?
Get involved. Whenever you get the opportunity to not only use school to be a source of education or academics, but to be involved with your school system, with your school itself, take the opportunity, get involved, because you not only will grow in the person you are, but will also grow in the change you're able to invoke and the passions you actually develop. I don't know what my life would have really been like if I hadn't, taken that leap to join student government, been exposed to this whole world, and then actually been exposed to this role in the Board of Education. So I think taking that first step and getting involved is something students need to do.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Jose, I keep like,
Go ahead.
do you remember either the moment or the event that, like,
lit it up for me?
That's
Yeah.
like, I think I want to.
Yeah, so we have a county student government. So I'm sure there's student council, student government, all of our schools. Prince George's County and most of our other counties around the state have a county level one. For us, it's the Prince George's Regional Association Student Governments. And on a quarterly basis, they do general assemblies with all middle and high school student councils, and all convene with over 300 plus students and some auditorium around the county. And in that meeting, the president, all the different executive board members of PGRAS are able to speak, give reports. But I remember when I first saw the role of the student board member, hearing the impact that they were doing, that they were involved with getting turf fields, what they were involved in getting, water fountains for bottles in our schools. I was like, a student is a part of that conversation. They have that seat at the table. And so for me, that was really what sparked for me. And so being able to get involved and, on a level that for many students, they don't think, they have a capacity to be heard from. So that I would say really there.
No, that's wonderful. I know that Jose wants to introduce our next guest, but I have one more question. There's always one in every crowd. It's me. We've talked around, but not directly, around building community, right? Because we talked about the diverseness that is Prince George's County. So how would you build community?
I think for me personally, I think seeing people in leadership roles that reflect you, that look like you, are able to connect with you, is the first step to ensuring people feel, that there is truly diversity. I can say there's very few Latino or Hispanic leaders in our county. And with such a fast growing population, I think a lot of the Latino Hispanic population really need to get out there and, erase that stigma that, Latinos shouldn't be getting involved in politics, things like that. Because when you actually have someone who understands the struggles, the culture, a lot of necessary change is done. And so I think that first step is with our electeds or even appointed onto different governmental departments is the first step. And I know I'm trying to make that step in our own school system to ensure that diversity. So students feel that, someone looks like me, someone actually has gone through what I have gone through, made that journey, their parents made that journey. And so I think those are the first steps really to ensuring diversity.
Wonderful, wonderful. When we get everyone together, all of our panelists and guests tonight, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but thank you. Jose.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. So the next guest is Ashanti Martinez. He is the son of Prince George's County, Maryland. He grew up here in the county and currently is living in New Carrollton, Maryland. And he currently he currently is a immigrant rights advocate, and he worked for a civil rights organization, CASA. I'm sure every member of the Latino community knows who CASA is. And thank you, Ashanti, for participating in this event. And let's start with the same question that we asked Alvaro at the beginning. I've seen you and I talked to you in the past, but other people might not know who Ashanti Martinez is. And so can you just tell us who is Ashanti Martinez?
Absolutely. Well, first, I just want to thank you guys for providing this space and this platform for me to share my story and my experiences, but also to hear of experiences of others within the Latino community here in Prince George's County. During Hispanic Heritage Month, I think it's so important that we emphasize and highlight and celebrate all of us and our accomplishments, but also talk about where we need to go as a community as well, because there's so much work that we do. For myself, I'm Ashanti Martinez. I'm a son of Prince George's County. I grew up and still live in New Carrollton. I'm a graduate of our public schools. I went to the illustrious Parkdale High School, right in Riverdale, Maryland, and then on to Howard University, and have worked on every level of government that there is. So I've done advocacy work here in the city of New Carrollton. I used to intern on the Hill for the late Elijah Cummings and worked for our Congressman Steny Hoyer. I've also worked at the state level with the Latino Caucus as one of our inaugural staff members, working to push policies that impact our community and on a state level. And then I've also worked at the county. I worked for Councilmember Tom Dernoga, and that's where I really got to work with this office when it was once a commission on doing the work that it needs to be done for the people here in Prince George's County. My service is all about other people. I want to make sure that I can use whatever tools and access that I have to bring the community that has poured so much into me forward. I do this because it is my love work. I really do try to do as much as I can with love and joy, because our politics can be so divisive. But we need people that are willing to build bridges and bring people together, but also deliver services and make sure that government is not just something that taxes people, but actually serves them. And we have a responsibility for all of us that know better to do better. And so I always try to do my best to just keep the community informed, keep the community engaged. But I'm always that point person, and always have been my family, for when people don't understand, when people can't receive or have access, we fight for our folks. And so the work that I do is just an extension of how I was raised. And I'm really, really, again, excited that we're having this really, really important conversation during this month.
Thank you. Just wanted to know, kind of similar to what Ms. Barbrooks asked earlier to Alvaro, how you got started. And I know that you've been an activist for a long time. How you initiated, why you decided to kind of enter this career of advocacy for the citizens of this county?
Yeah, I always have had a love for service of others. My mom tells a story about when I was 2, I was at a playground, and I was going up a slide, and I realized there was a line behind me. And so instead of just going, I instead cheered everyone else on and helped everyone else go before I did. And so even before I could really talk or walk, I was always looking out for other people. And in high school, the Prince George's County Young Democrats were looking to expand to register voters at the high school level. Here in Maryland, we're really unique in that you can be a registered voter at 16, even though you can't participate in state or federal elections, you can be prepared to at the age of 16. And so we work to register folks in high schools, and that's really where I got my start at 14. And then from there, really working through some of the stuff that Alvaro is doing right now through PGRAS and the student governments that exist here in the state, with the Maryland State Association of Student Councils, helping elect people up and down the state to student councils, but also to boards of education. Maryland State Association of Student Councils also has the opportunity to elect members to the State Board of Education that ultimately gets selected by the governor. And so doing that work throughout high school really opened my eyes to one, how political education is, not just here in Prince George's County, but across the state of Maryland. It's very much a topic of interest, even for those that don't have children in the school system. We're all invested in our future and wanting to make sure that our government is doing the best it can to ensure our children are receiving the education they deserve. And so working through student government, through student advocacy, I ended up with the opportunities to go and work on the Hill with Elijah Cummings and his office at Howard University. I then worked with Steny Hoyer, but a lot of my advocacy came from just being super, super involved at the most local levels, getting people civically engaged, and just preparing my community for when it was their time to vote.
I love how you said this is your love work. And I love the building bridges while also providing services. So maybe could you unpack that just a little bit more? Because I think it's so important what you said. Those two concepts coexist. They're not mutually exclusive, right? And how do we do more of that? Because building bridges is so important, right? And yeah, so talk to us a little bit more about that and what that looks like in a practical sense.
Yeah, a lot of my work is based on relationships and being able to utilize those relationships to bring service deliveries for my community. Whether that's getting, funding for a project that CASA has, whether that's passing policies that impact renters and working families, whatever the case may be, I can't do it alone. And so you have to do things together. You can't legislate on islands. You've got to be able to bring people together, to have conversation, to understand where people are at and meet them there. But ultimately, a lot of my experiences have been just being in those rooms, having the privilege to see other legislators. Like I have a really, really good mentor, Delegate Jocelyn Pena-Melanek, who's now the chair of the Health and Government Operations Committee in Annapolis. Well before she was this big star, she was a rising star who was able to work with people in the legislature and pass many different bills that impact our lives on a daily basis, and not necessarily do it in a braggadocious way, but do it in an effective way, because government is a tool. You know, I really do see this as a place of opportunity, but the only way you get those opportunities to the community is through working in partnership. You've got to be hand in glove with folks, and not just your colleagues that you need vote for to pass things, but you also need to have synergy between the county and state, making sure that the county, state, and federal are all talking to each other and are all working towards a common goal. And so any of the work that we do that really impacts people in a meaningful way, we want to make sure that we're doing it in conjunction with each other. Because if not, we're doing things in silos, and that's not what's going to be best for our people. And so just going through the motions and having lived experiences of watching people make everyone come together, talk, get the meetings, you know, herd the cats, as they say, really be an organizer. That has lended me really helpful in the career that I've built. And it's just something that, you know, relationships are the currency of this business. And so we've always got to make sure that we're relationship rich.
Yeah, I love how you are focusing on relationships, because that is something, in fact, in a meeting yesterday, I was saying, isn't that what really drives everything that we do, whether it's our personal lives, professional lives, acquaintances, total strangers? It really is about relationships, right? And that that human factor is always there, always there. So
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you for that.
I do have a question in terms of how I think it was building. Ms. Butterbrooks asked the question about how do we build a community, and I just wondering, as one of our Latino leaders in the Prince George's County, how do you try to engage the Latino community to be more involved in the process?
That's a great question. You know, I think it comes with us just showing up. You know, 50% of this work is really just being present and showing that we matter. I think even within the community, showing that all of us are part of the community. I mean, I'm a Black Latino. I know we don't have time, but we have a lot to unpack with that, right? And the colorism that exists within our communities, but being unapologetic about who we are, being honest about who we are, but then meeting people where they're at and connecting them, making government tangible for them. I think a lot of people have ideas of what government is or what they should do, and they have large expectations about what government should be doing. But I think teaching people and breaking it down to them in the way that they understand is the first step in getting them engaged, but then also letting them know that there is power in their voice, right? Collectively coming together to speak on an issue, we are much more powerful than, you know, just having one of us speak on these issues. And so, you know, I love the work that I do at CASA. I represent our members both in Prince George's and Montgomery County, but I might come to a meeting as one, but I have over 60,000 members that stand behind me with their marching orders about what we're to get done. And we really do try to put our members in the driver's seats of their own liberation. So anything that I'm talking or preaching about, know that we have a committee of leaders from our community that were educated on the topic, made a choice, voted amongst themselves, and really are fighting for those things collectively. And so I think that's how we build community, is by building buy-in. You know, I'm a firm believer that those closest to the pain must be closest to the power, because if we can lift up the least among us, we all are going to benefit. And that's something that I think we all have to work towards when we're thinking about our impact and the changes that we want to make in our community.
Yeah, beautifully said. I do want to take us back just for a moment, because I never want to miss an opportunity to engage people's minds that may be listening. And you raise an important issue, I think, you know, about being Black and Latino and colorism. I think we should take a moment just to unpack a little bit of it, particularly for those who don't know, we have a series, Diversity Dialogue, the elephant you don't see. And last month, just at the last Tuesday of September, we talked about the book. I think it's called Can't Tame the Wild Tongues, I think. Yeah, there we go. Wild Tongues Can't Be Tamed. Thank you, Kyla. I had them a little reversed. but it was an amazing book from the Latino perspective about all the, it was like 13 or 15 different short stories. And it was so eye-opening about sort of, you know, the Afro-Latino, Black and Latino colorism. So could you just unpack what that is? Because this may be the first time some people are listening, have the, you know, hear this so that they can start really thinking about this.
No, absolutely. You know, I don't think our education system does a good enough job in educating us on how vast the diaspora is, and ensuring that we understand that, you know, we all across the Caribbean and Central and South America, at some point, enslaved Africans were stopped off and dropped off to contribute to the labor of, you know, the international slave trade. And so my folks were dropped off in Puerto Rico. And that's where I get my color from. My mentor, Jocelyn Peña-Melenic, often says, I didn't get this color on sitting on the beach. You know, this comes from an African history and legacy. But in our own community, like many other places around the world, white supremacy was the rule of the day and still very much is. And so there are a lot of power structures that come with being lighter skinned, and there's a lot of benefits that come from that within our community. And you see that in media, you see that in politics, you see that in culture and what is celebrated. Even like thinking about countries like Brazil, Brazil has the second largest population of Black folks, but I guarantee you, if you Googled it, you might have to click through a few pages before you saw a Black face. And that is just the unfortunate reality of the world. But we exist, we have huge numbers. We're in Prince George's County. There's a lot of Afro-Latinos that are doing the work. Like I mentioned, Jocelyn Peña-Melenic, you have Gabe Acevedo that's in Montgomery County, you have Denny Tavares, you have Brianna Urbina in Prince George's in New Carrollton. There's a bunch of us that exist here that are representing for our communities. But there is a lot of work that needs to be done. You just saw in LA, you know, Nori Martinez was caught on tape saying some really racist things about, you know, a council member's child. And so there's a lot of breaking down the divisions between Black and brown folks that needs to be done, because, you know, Black folks are Latino too. And we deserve to be every much celebrated and embraced within our culture as well.
Yeah, beautifully, beautifully said. I think what we'll do, we have lots more questions, but we'll wait till we bring everyone together. And so we want to bring our third guest up. And we're very excited to have Miss CHELOVE. Now, let me get my notes here. So, Miss CHELOVE is an independent Washington, D.C. based art director, muralist, designer, and illustrator. Her creative output is informed by her multicultural background rooted in the tropical mysticism of Java, Indonesia, and formative years growing up in the punk, go-go, and graffiti-fueled streets of the 80s and 90s in Washington, D.C. So before we get into questioning, you know, we here at the Office of Human Rights really believe, again, in building community. And there are many ways to build community, but art is a strong and powerful way. We had the performing arts at the beginning, and I would argue that performing arts is also what Miss CHELOVE does, as well as the virtual or the visual arts. So we invite her to do a presentation for us about her work and her art, and then we'll get into some questions. So thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Renee. And thank you for having me. This is a really special group of folks doing really important work. So I'm humbled by all of you. I'm going to dive into a presentation. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to just
take all the time you need. Take all the time you need.
Okay, I'm going to flip through here. Okay. Let me know if you are seeing this.
We have it. Yes, there we have it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So my name is Sita Sadali. My artist name is Miss CHELOVE. And I'm an artist whose practice is really focused on public art, and in particular, the practice of mural making. Most of my commissions come through city-funded mural projects, ones like Murals DC that we have here in Washington, DC. And most are exterior projects. Most from 7 stories high on down to smaller 1-story type projects, but visible for free 24 hours a day throughout the city. What I'm showing you now are, one of the most rewarding aspects of this work is how the work is received by the public once you're gone. So thanks to social media, you get to see the life of the piece after you've left and what impact that has on the community. There are a lot of emotions that get stirred up by these works. A lot of times it's surprising to the artists, we do our thing, we have our head down and we leave, and people just become really emotionally fused with these works. My work primarily focuses on themes of nature, the environment, Black and Indigenous people of color, resilient women of color, Indigenous underserved communities, music, sort of street culture. It's all kind of mixed in there together. But definitely one thread that it continues in my work is my culture and heritage, being AAPI, Asian Pacific Islander, half Javanese from Indonesia, and the other half, my father is a blend of Western European with a whole bunch of other things sprinkled in. So being multicultural, being of a single mother who's raised 4 kids, again, as was mentioned earlier, I grew up in the oldest house in Hyattsville, the youngest of 4 kids. My mother won a Fulbright scholarship, so she's an immigrant who came here to study. So I grew up seeing this, this woman who's raised these 4 kids on her own, English as a second language, she's doing it all herself. So I found myself reflecting images of strong women and women of color. This piece right here is in Thomas Circle, and it was painted just as the pandemic happened. So I started March 1st, 2020, and we all know what happened right in the middle of March. The city just emptied out, and I saw all of the traffic just drain. It was really interesting hearing stories from people that were watching this installation happen, that they were really confused. We were all confused, feeling so many emotions, and they would be taking these walks at night just to get out and get some air. And they saw this thing happening. They saw a woman painting it, and they saw these 2 women, emerging, and it gave them a lot of strength. A lot of the folks that would tell me that were women, and they said it made them feel protected and stronger. So it's really interesting, these stories that you hear from folks. This project in particular, I wanted to highlight really quickly. It's Unity Healthcare. It's a community health clinic. They have over dozens of locations throughout Washington, D.C. This institution was started providing healthcare to the homeless and incarcerated, and their patient population is overwhelmingly immigrant. So through Murals DC, the program in DC, I was given this project, and I thought about what people would want to see if they weren't feeling well, if they needed to be uplifted. In the grandmother's shawl, you'll see welcome in 5 different languages, English, Vietnamese, Swahili, Spanish, and Amharic. We have a lot of Ethiopian folks in the area. So, these little things, these little Easter eggs, if you will, that are kind of layered into the artwork are meant to touch people in specific ways. And in this case, it's saying, this was painted during the Trump era when all the craziness was happening. I had heard stories of patients trying to go to get care at this center, and there being bus raids and people being pulled off the bus. So people were scared to come in and receive health care. So it was an especially poignant message in this time to say, hey, you are welcome, you're human, you belong here. This center is also a place that people come to for yoga classes and, you know, other sort of community building events. So this is a real community space. So it was a pleasure to produce this for them. What's interesting is I did another project for the National Postal Museum, which is one of the Smithsonian museums. And it was a postcard project through the Jesuit refugee service that would connect people in America who would write postcards to refugees, political and environmental refugees all over the world. So this piece that I just mentioned, the photograph was used in this project and sent all over the world, which was really cool. This is a close-up of one of the actual cards. Another one that I produced in the series was this one that really explores a refugee, someone who's displaced, and you know the long road ahead. Home is stitched into this little girl's backpack in French, Arabic, and Spanish and English. But just, you know, to sort of hopefully connect with most of the people in this program are young people who are receiving the cards. So this was meant to connect with that population and just sort of say, hey, you know, you carry with you on your back the hope and the love. And hopefully that makes the journey stronger, easier for you. Notable for PG County folks, the Pocket Library in Mount Rainier is, just as it says, it's a small little pocket right tucked away right there next to the traffic circle. This was a series of murals that I produced early last year. And you know, again, touching on themes of nature. It's a full installation with some three-dimensional stuff in the back, as you can see in the image on the right. Once you open the door, it's kind of like limitless possibilities of, you know, literature and books. And this powerful quote by Roald Dahl, somewhere inside of us is the power to change the world. I'm gonna flip through these a little bit quick just to get through them all. This is a project in Anacostia, across the street from Busboys and Poets, to commemorate the centennial of the women's right to vote. And as we know, women of color had a much harder time of it after that proclamation and legislation. Women of color still had a very hard time in a lot of areas of this country voting. So this is to celebrate these women and the work they did. Zeke Kalasa is a Yankton Sioux political activist and musician and so many wonderful things on the left. That's her portrait. And Mary Church Terrell on the right. Another project that I did in National Landing, otherwise known as Crystal City. This is for a restaurant called The Freshman, and they wanted to commission something that really celebrated their staff, who are largely from Central America. So you've got some landscapes from El Salvador in the back, some Mexican and Guatemalan themes in the dress and in the flora and fauna here. Again, celebrating culture, how important is it, you know, and how can we kind of blend that with everyday life to increase awareness, respect, you know, for diversity and different cultures, curiosity. Another one for La Puerta Verde, a restaurant in Ivy City, celebrating Mexican culture and traditions. This is in Kennedy Street. It's called She Smiles 100 Suns. It lies just across the alleyway from a childcare, like an open area. So this is really for those children in Uptown, and it has to do with the strength of the dandelion and the power of the herb, and just in a city that's changing so quickly with so much gentrification. How can I provide a window into populations that are quickly disappearing from these communities? So another one I just finished in off of H Street. I think it's technically Capitol Hill, but this celebrates 6 different student populations for this elementary school, Goding Elementary. First, you have the Piscataway First Nation from this area. You have Greece, Ethiopia, Palestine, El Salvador, and Japan. a favorite of mine. A couple of other murals around town, Benning Road, a classic nightclub, a lot of music happening there. I'm going to flip through a couple of projects overseas. I did some work in a residency in Opelika near Miami. And these are a few of the scenes from that. Trips to Pakistan and Karachi to do some work with a few universities and art schools out there. And in Colombia, working with displaced populations, both Venezuelans and Colombians in Buritaca, which is like northwest Caribbean area. Very, very rewarding to work with those groups of folks. So I touched in about my culture just a little bit, being half Javanese, but raised by my Javanese mother in America. We had this really strong cultural attachment, but we weren't there. So it was really odd being separated from all of our family, and all of these things that you see, they're so different from what we would see here in DC. Fortunately, we grew up next to the, going to the Indonesian embassy, which is in DuPont Circle, once a week at least, to participate in cultural activities. Our mother played the gamelan orchestra, so we were still connected to our culture. It still finds its way into my work. This is a piece that was just removed from the Women's Museum, the whole Western facade, and it explores my heritage, specific elements from my heritage, in the shadow puppets and the gold pieces that you see here. So I wanted to show really how my culture still permeates my work today, and how I still am striving to kind of discover and find myself through these pieces of work. Growing up, another thing that was really important to me was music, underground music particularly, graffiti culture, hardcore punk rock, and hip hop, and a lot of these musics. And that still finds its way into my work these days, just with the energy and the sort of power of music, and how it allies with self-expression in such a special way. And it just really transcends really everything physical, especially if you're in a dark space with, a couple of hundred people and you can't see anything, you just feel, right? So that's a big part of my work as well. I'm going to flip through this really quick. This is a mural that I just completed in Shaw, and it highlights 5 different portraits of strong women of color. And it was a real celebration for folks to see this going up. A lot of the women in the neighborhood were just really proud to see images, of themselves reflected in a public space. It was a really special project. But really, what's so interesting about the last couple of years is what happened after the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent uprising all over our country, the city, our country, and the world. And the power of public art to really respond to these things. I mean, this was painted right in front of the White House for a very particular reason. Donald Trump would take his helicopter up and down 16th Street. So this was the message for him specifically. We had a lot of protests. This is Washington, D.C. It's what happens. People come here to protest and to legislate and all of those things, but really hitting the streets, you see a lot of protests. And these are some images of Guardians of the Four Directions, the first piece I opened with, that were sort of activated. And it became a really big thoroughfare for a lot of these protest lines. And it was just powerful seeing these images on social media. But people really, it became a symbol, seeing an indigenous woman, 2 indigenous women proudly standing, with nature in this space, I think really made people feel an emotion that they wouldn't have otherwise. I think this is the last piece I'm going to show. This is a piece commissioned by a local restaurant chain. When all of the protests happened here, a lot of the buildings in DC were boarded up. and closed down because there were a lot of violent things happening in the streets. Of course, a lot of these plywoods became spaces for people to create their own public art. So this was sort of my contribution, for a lot of folks that were coming to DC who maybe didn't have such great intentions, and they wanted to do, they had, they wanted to cause trouble. Let's just say this is my message to them, that we're not going to stand for that here. And of course, these are names of Americans that were killed due to police violence, police brutality, and the theme and the thrust of this piece was about saying their names. If you say their names, you keep them alive, you keep their memory alive, and we have more of a conversation about maybe what happened and how we can prevent those things in the future. So murals can be very powerful tools for social justice, for change, for education, and for expression.
That was amazing. I think that in your presentation, you have taught us one way or how to build community, right? The themes are all universal, from Alvaro to Ashanti. It's about communicating, and that's what you're doing through a different medium, right? It's what I would say a universal language of art. You have taught us that senior reflection is important to building community. Ashanti kind of spoke about that. So did Alvaro, about seeing somebody that looks like him. You talked about community building through learning about others that don't look like us, but seeing their culture reflected. So thank you. Your art is magnificent. So thank you. For those listening, now you can do a drive around tour in DC and say, oh, look, I saw her. She told me about this. So that's wonderful. So let's bring everybody up if we can.
So if I may, Ms. Butterbrook, I would do that, especially drive around. I think I've seen certain things, but I haven't put it together. But I also want to mention, I think you mentioned it too, I think is just looking at the artwork that you have done in some of the themes that you have, especially when you were talking about the little girl dealing with refugees, right? That is a history that is transcend whatever nationality, cultural, because we know that the Latino community, they have gone through that. There's the constant migration to this country just for a better life, a better beginning. So it's just your artwork is just a representation of all worldwide. People go through the same struggles. It doesn't matter where you're from or what culture they have. So I think I kind of saw that when you were presenting the refugee mural. It's like so very applicable to so many cultures.
Yeah, beautifully done. And I think it really sets us up for kind of something that Ashanti said, like, talking is good, but next steps, right? And so I think, Sita, you're setting us up like, you are actually doing the next step, right? Not just talking, but you are doing, showing us how relationships, how this goes. So we had a question from an audience member, and it says, all right.
I think this question.
Yes, there we go. Right. I have it, but you can do it if you'd like.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. From your perspective, so this is all three of you. Well, yes, I think it does. Which are the three most important needs, and very specifically of the Latino community in the county? So different perspectives.
Ashanti, Alvaro, I don't know, anyone or want to take first step to answer that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's simple. I thought of when I saw the question, my top three, it's access to healthcare. We need to expand our system that reaches every single member of our community. If COVID hasn't taught us anything, it's that access to care before you're sick is vital for health outcomes. We want to make sure we're doing everything that we can to ensure our community is protected. The second thing is access to affordable housing. Our region is becoming unobtainable. And so we need to do everything that we can to make sure that prices are stabilized so that people can stay here and that we are not pricing out people from our community. And the third thing is citizenship. We watched what happened with the Fifth Circuit last week under DACA, where they said it was unlawful in Texas. At the end of the day, DACA is a great program, but citizenship is the end goal. And so we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to protect the families that exist here in the county that don't currently have documentation or protection. But we also want to make sure that we fight to ensure that they receive that. And that's doing so much advocacy work on various levels to make sure that happens.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and Shanti really hit the nail on the head with really, I think, addressing the prominent issues facing the community. And they all, I think, tie in with, I guess, the community's effort to ensure that the Latino community knows the routes to do things. And so, for lack of a better word, I guess, finding how to, get legal access, get that healthcare access, go and venture out your way, because I know for a lot of families, the prominent way has been by word of mouth, just hearing from a neighbor, from a friend, of this clinic, that's offering free supports. But I think the county really should be taking that a deeper, I guess, making a deeper plan to ensure that they're expanding their resources even further, because I know the money's there. I know the money and the opportunity is there to want to integrate and want to, I guess, reach out even more. And I think Ashanti really hit a good point when it comes to legal access and citizenship. A lot of our Latino community established now are taxpayers who do not have any documentation. And for a lot of them, it's a standstill to really understand, what are their options? If I go to this attorney, am I really just wasting my money, my time? And so offering more legal services, I think, is something truly helpful. Because for a lot of them, they may have been here for more than 20 years. I know my parents have been here for more than 20 years and, are paying the same taxes that many other citizens are doing, but are restricted from the access to healthcare, from being able to vote for their representation. And so I think, that citizenship piece is something really big, and that access point.
Excellent. And Sita, you move in around lots and lots of communities, but sort of what is your, beat on the pulse?
Yeah, I mean, for me, more broadly, for immigrant communities, it's like, folks should feel safe. That's the first thing. And with the way things have been going lately, it's just their basic safety. It's really a stress. So I would hope that folks could feel as safe as they could. I think there's definitely we can clone more Alvaro and Ashanti's. Like you guys, you folks are doing, you're doing the walk. You're walking the walk, and we need more folks like you advocating and making real change. Outside of that, like average Joe, like a regular person, there are mutual aid networks and like sort of citizen-led organizations where someone has a need. The elder down the street is sick, she needs groceries, who's going to help her? So like an immediate kind of thing. you can search and look around for those types of networks and see how you can help. And that includes our elders, our immigrant neighbors, and really everyone that's in need. So those are the two things I would say.
Yeah, you know, that leads us to, and I think this last question will probably get us to closing, but now with listening to all the presentations, so we started off with music as a form of building community, right? In another universal language. And then we had, you know, the presentations by Alvaro and Ashanti and Sita. So what one thing would each of you take from either the presentations tonight or this discussion and say to people listening is the one thing that is the first step to building community among the diverseness that is Prince George's County, the DMV, but, you know, particularly Prince George's County? How do we build those bridges that Ashanti talked about? How do we do it?
I would say for the county government that is housing all of the amazing citizens of Prince George's County to make the effort to build a stronger relationship with those organizations who are going out of their way to help the different communities, to help the Latino community, you know, build an even stronger relationship with CASA. I mean, putting them more out there, sharing more of those resources, and other organizations that are out there doing the work. And I think that is really the first step, is building relationships with organizations doing the work so the county can follow those models to put in the work themselves.
Thank you. Thank you. Ashanti, what do you think? If you're giving advice to somebody listening, first step they can take.
Yeah, I think the first step is recognizing that each and every one of us possesses talents that are worth sharing, and ultimately figuring out what is your why. Why do you feel connected to community? What part of community or aspects of it you want to enrich or protect or serve in? Taking that self-reflection, I think, only makes you a better leader. And I think there is something that each of us contribute that make us unique to our various communities. And so once you tap into that, I think we're unstoppable. But understanding also that the only way we move forward in a way that is for all of us is together. And so figuring out how you can utilize your talents with others, I think, is the best way we can make change.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Sita, what do you think?
Again, I'm coming from, I think, a very simple perspective of talk to your neighbors. I think it starts there. It's really surprising how many people have never met their neighbors in like 5 years, and they're literally right there. And they're literally the person that would help you if your house was on fire. Like, it's a very intimate relationship, but why are we so distant? You know, and if you extrapolate that into life in general, I mean, it even gets more distant. So I think starting there, it's like the thing when you're walking, you know, by someone on the street and you say hello, and you can tell they kind of want to, but they're just like, you know, but it kind of just opens the flow of exchange, which is the really the core first step, I feel.
Yeah, no, that's great. Great. Jose, do you have any reflections or anything you'd like to say before we?
Overall, I think to me it was a very good program just to know a little bit about Alvaro, Ashanti, MISS CHELOVE. I honestly want to thank all of the guests for participating in this event, but also a special thank for Alvaro and Ashanti, because, you know, as they mentioned, we need pieces that represent the community out there. And so then, you know, if they are out there representing the community, that gives me the ability to tell my daughter or my son, hey, you know, these people are there representing the community. These people can do this. That mean you can do as well. So so thank you very much for being out there and putting your name out there, and for the things that you do and for the community that you represent.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank, you know, we asked for a commitment of time, and we thank you, each one of you, sincerely for taking the time to spend here but also in preparing to spend the time here. So we don't take your time lightly. And I think that we as a community have grown from hearing all the different perspectives. And I hope that those listening have taken at least one little thing, a little seed that was planted that will help us all grow together in more positive ways, continue on the journey that we are. So thank you, Sita. Thank you, Ashanti. Thank you, Alvaro. And thank you, Jose. Thank you, Kyla. Thank you, Vespa. And thank you, Miss Miriam and Miss Lydia for providing the simultaneous translation for us.
And Alex for the musical piece.
Oh, yes. Thank you. And Alex, thank you. I'll give each one of you, if there's any one last thing you'd like to say, we'll go around the room. So Alvaro, any last thing you'd like to say?
Thank you so much for putting this together, for offering me the platform to speak a bit of my story, my role. Thank you so much for everyone who put this together. Thank you so much for Ashanti, Miss CHELOVE. I want to talk more about how you got to that artist name later, but we'll talk later. Yeah. No, but thank you so much. You all, your murals are amazing. Ashanti, I've known you for some time and your work is amazing and you're someone I look up to. And so thank you so much, everyone, for having me tonight.
Thank you for being here. Ashanti.
Yeah, I just want to take the time to thank you guys for having this space during this month to include me and allow me to share my story, my experiences. You all do amazing work here in the Office of Human Rights. And even when you all were commissioned, I've been able to work with you guys with ease. So thank you so much, Miss Battlebrook, for your leadership here. Under Angela also Brooks, you guys do amazing work. And any way that I can continue to support and just ensure that our community knows that you all exist, about your programming, ensure that our community knows that you guys are a resource, please use me as a vessel. But thank you again for having this space.
Thank you. When we weren't expecting accolades for the closing, thank you. So now we're going to stalk you, Ashanti. We're going to put you on our listserv so that you can help us get the word out. Thank you. Thank you. Sita, any closing words?
Just echo everyone else. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me the space to share some visuals in the work. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can direct message me at on Instagram at Miss CHELOVE. That's MISSCHELOVE. Also on my page, there's an email button if you'd rather just send me an email. I'm here to answer any questions that you folks have. And as Ashanti said, if there's any way I can support the mission at the Office of Human Rights, I'm here. So use me.
Thank you. Okay, everybody heard it. We have commitments now. So when we stalk, it won't be stalking.
Nope.
There was consent to stalk.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. Please, everyone, stay safe. Have a wonderful weekend, and it's not there yet. I know it's only Wednesday, but have a wonderful rest of the week and the weekend. And let's continue to build those bridges. So thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.